Greetings and welcome, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, to another fashionably late review here at Words About Games. Amy here, and today I'm going to talk to you all about Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt. First of all, I want to give out some general information about the game. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt is a third-person battle royale developed and published by Sharkmob and was released on April 27th, 2022 on PC via Steam and also on PlayStation 5. According to the game's store description, Bloodhunt is a thrilling, free-to-play battle royale game set in Prague, consumed by a ruthless war between vampire factions. Use your supernatural powers, weapons, and wit to hunt your rivals and dominate the night. I know what you might be thinking. Of all the types of games you could make out of the Vampire the Masquerade IP, a battle royale doesn't immediately spring to mind. And it's okay to think that. I did. I sighed when I first saw Bloodhunt announced. Vampire the Masquerade is a tabletop RPG built around heavy role-playing in a setting as much about characters, relationships, survival, and political intrigue, much more than cracking enemy skulls with a baseball bat or shooting them with guns. I mean, you can definitely crack people with baseball bats and shoot them with guns, but I don't really think that's the main focus of Vampire the Masquerade, or at least not the way I've played it in the past. But I'm here to tell you that Bloodhunt actually caught me by surprise, and it's a surprisingly solid multiplayer game. The word I'd best use to describe Bloodhunt after having put a few hours into it is promise. This is a game that takes the battle royale, puts it into a pretty cool setting, and throws in a few cool ideas to create a compelling experience, though one with a few drawbacks, some of which are by design, and some of which are out of the developer's hands. From a core gameplay perspective, Bloodhunt feels like a polished but fairly standard battle royale. You've got the fast-paced gunplay, the third-person perspective, the high-risk spawn locations, the shrinking area of engagement, class-based characters who each have their own disciplines, which is Vampire's fancy word for special abilities, like the Muse being able to heal, or the Brute's shockwave punch that can also deflect bullets. There's some PvP elements where you can engage heavily armed groups of soldiers for some rare loot, provided they don't kill you first, but mostly you're focused on making sure you're the last of about 40 players still standing. But Bloodhunt definitely benefits from some vampiric twists laid on top of this formula. The two biggest and best new ideas are the verticality of the map, unlocked thanks to your vampire's ability to climb any surface quickly, and the civilians that are hanging out in the streets of Prague. More on those in a moment. First, the verticality, which makes it feel like you're playing across two different but interconnected maps, street level and across the rooftops, and it can make combat feel quite tactical and somewhat exhilarating. The civilians offer a truly unique twist. As far as I know, I haven't played a battle royale for a while. As a vampire, you can sink your fangs into the humans you run across to regain health, but also gain some kind of buff, such as health regeneration, or you can buff your abilities, or you can even gain an extra life. You start with limited slots for buffs, but you can earn more by diablerizing enemy players. You see, it's not enough to just knock down a player and leave them to slowly die. Down players will actually get back up again if you don't finish them off. And you can do this by shooting them or by diablerizing them, which is sort of like a special finisher that unlocks a new buff slot that you can fill by snacking on the neck of an unassuming human. It creates an interesting reward loop. Killing players, or the entity, a group of heavily armed NPCs usually guarding high-tier loot, isn't just helpful to thin out the number of competitors, it's also practically essential to your long-term survival, allowing you to max out your buffs and give you the biggest advantage you can get. Oh, and if you feed on a human in view of another human, breaking the masquerade and revealing yourself as a vampire, a bloodhunt is called on you and every player in the game can see you as a dot on their minimap and via a red outline. Which, as a gameplay mechanic, it's very interesting that, you can accidentally reveal your location to every single player in the map. But if you actually stop and think about it for a second, like, feeding on one human in front of another human breaks the masquerade, but 40 heavily armed vampires climbing and jumping across the rooftops of Prague, blasting each other with guns, doesn't break the masquerade? I don't know. This mechanic does get really complicated and anything beyond a 1v1 engagement, which feels like both a good thing and a bad thing. Like, if 3 players or more are fighting each other, you can sometimes end up in an unintentionally hilarious game of whack-a-mole. You knock one player down and you have to fight the other one, and then you knock them down and the first player you knock down has probably got back up before you've had a chance to finish them, and after they knock you down, they have to deal with the second player that you knocked down, and so on. There are some other interesting ideas and cool concepts as well. The gas which encroaches on the map and apparently also doesn't break the masquerade in any way, restricts the area of play, but it collapses inward asymmetrically rather than forming a circle, which can create some interesting map layouts and gauntlets as the game wears on. You'll also often encounter random modifiers to some of your matches, such as removing the entity from a match entirely, or making it so every location in the map contains high tier loot. There are also shops and pharmacies and things like that that have a lot of good loot, but you also set off an alarm when you enter and alert everybody nearby to your presence, which is a good segue for me to talk about the sound design in this game, which is freaking great. It does a really good job of like letting you know which direction things are coming from. Like if you're playing this game with headphones and someone starts shooting at somebody else, you'll have a fairly good indication not only of the direction that the gunfire is coming in, but roughly how far away it is. The 3D audio in Bloodhunt is definitely a highlight of the game. Another highlight of the game, sort of, is character customization, which is in theory, incredible. There are some pretty decent options for customizing your vampires, and a lot of wonderful options for outfits, tattoos, makeup, and more that are locked behind the paywall of the in-game store or the premium tier of the Battle Pass. And while I can't be too mad that a free-to-play game has monetization options, I really wanted to have a deeper customization options at my fingertips as someone who doesn't really want to spend money on the game right now. But this is a testament to how well Shark Mob have nailed the look and feel of the Vampire the Masquerade vampires. One thing I definitely need to talk about, though, is that this game feels like it has a fairly high skill floor. Once the training wheels come off and you're not playing with a mix of bots and players anymore, like for me personally, I was getting annihilated by players who had definitely put in a significant amount of practice into the game. I'm not saying this to complain because I'm bad at the game. I know I'm bad at the game. I'm bad at most games. I just think it bears mentioning if you want to be halfway successful at Bloodhunt, it feels like a pretty significant time investment will be involved, especially after your first few matches when the bots are removed and you're just fighting against other players with god tier aim and extraordinary parkour skills. Wait, those are just the PC players. What's ultimately going to probably drive me away from the game sooner rather than later, however, is getting wrecked by keyboard and mouse players thanks to the game's almost necessary crossplay. Turning off crossplay to play against just PS5 players made wait times between matches take like up to 10 minutes, which isn't a great turnaround for a multiplayer game where getting back into a match as quickly as possible after a defeat is kind of needed to keep the flow of the game going. It sucks dying like really quickly in a match only to then have to wait like 10 minutes for the next one. And all of this combined with a seeming lack of much of a casual player base makes Bloodhunt a game that probably requires a not insignificant time investment to learn its intricacies. There is a really solid battle royale experience here, but if it's not something you're willing to invest your time into, it might feel like you're getting nowhere really slowly. For me, it's probably not a game I'm going to wholly invest myself in. Like, I can see myself playing for a bit longer right now before other games come and steal my attention away, but it's also a game I'm not going to uninstall from my PS5. Like I said right at the top of this review, Bloodhunt has a lot of promise, and it's a game I feel like I want to drop in on every now and again to keep tabs on. It's not Apex or Overwatch games I sunk hundreds of hours apiece into, but I genuinely feel like with a few tweaks or a bigger casual player base, that could easily change, and who knows? A few months from now, I could definitely see it becoming a game that I struggle to tear myself away from. Well, that's it for this review. Let us know what you think of the game. Did you like it? Are you in the middle? Or was it just not for you? Leave me a comment down below. You know where the comments are. Or hit me up on Twitter. All the info is in the description. And I'm going to get out of here because I have tons more games to play and there's not enough time in the day to play them all. So I'll see you next time.